Hello. I'm here to do the second part of history analysis words that we need for history class. My name is Jennifer Hobson-Plattner, and I am your instructor for History 215 online. We got through half of our words. The next word we have is misogyny. Misogyny is a word that means dislike of, contempt for, or ingrained prejudice against women, a hatred of women, or a belief held that women are less valuable, less intelligent, or the lesser of the two sexes. And the important thing to remember about misogyny is that actually women can believe this too. So there are women who can be taught that they are less and that they believe that instead of believing that they are equal. The next word we have is feminism. And feminism does not mean, or if you're a feminist, does not mean that you hate men, which sometimes people misinterpret what it means. It means the advocacy of women's rights on the grounds of political, social, and economic equality of men, not a hatred of men, but a desire to be treated with equality and not to be treated as a doormat. Okay, that's feminism. Proletariat. Proletariat. You might have heard of Karl Marx. He wrote the Communist Manifesto. And it's really important in history class to understand that Karl Marx and his ideas of communism are completely different from what you hear from Cuban communism or Russian communism or Chinese communism. If you actually read Karl Marx, and hopefully we'll get a chance to in this class, he is a beautiful and amazing writer. He was the son of a very wealthy factory owner in Germany, and he really had a heart for lower class, the working class. And so just as I was amazed through grad school reading pieces of his work, it's very different, and his ideas are very different than what I thought they were. And that's the thing about history. It really is an investigation into the truth and actual reading of things, not guessing or hearsay, because things are often misconstrued. And just because I like the reading of Karl Marx, I'm not a communist at all, just so you know. Your teacher's not a communist. Proletariat. Proletariat is referring to workers or working class people regarded collectively as a mass group, often used when discussing Marxism. They're considered lower class, the lower class working class. Okay, matriarchy. When I think of matriarchy, I think of mother, and that's kind of what this idea is portraying. A system of society or government ruled by women, a woman or women, or where women have a higher influence, where the descent and relationships are reckoned through the female lines. Now, it can be one of these, or matriarchy doesn't have to be all of them. In the Indian, American Indian history, it was more of a matriarchy. You would get married and live with your wife's family, or the children would go on the mother's side with the mother's family, and they would have a little more say in the children's lives. So it doesn't mean that women not necessarily ruled. There was still a chief, but they had greater influence. It's matriarchy. Next one is patriarchy. Okay, patriarchy. All right, you're going to hear this word a lot. It's been in our reading a lot already. The system of society or government in which the father, eldest brother, or eldest male is head of the family and makes all the decisions. A system in which men hold all the power and women are largely excluded from it. A male-dominated society or hierarchy. That's patriarchy. Okay, we have elite. Elite, when we talk about George Washington and many of the first presidents, actually the first middle class president was Abraham Lincoln, so the rest of them were elitists. So the word elite means the people in the highest class, usually extremely wealthy and in the top 2% of the population in the world, usually very rich, highly educated, and often far removed from the exposure to common life in their country. Okay. We have a couple of words. We have underdeveloped nation or country. We have a developing nation or country. and let's see, developed, one that's already developed. So we'll start with the developed nation or country. This was what was formerly referred to as first world country. A country with a highly developed economic system, advanced technological infrastructure, and highly industrialized. So the U.S. would be an example of that. Okay. An underdeveloped nation or country. A nation that is very poor and has very little industrialization. Previously referred to as a third world country or a backwards nation. Depicted by extreme poverty and little natural resources, population growth usually puts a huge strain on their food supply. All right, so that is underdeveloped nation. That would be maybe Ethiopia at this time, or just think of possibly Haiti, just extremely poor nations. Developing nation or country. A nation in which income is much lower than an industrialized nation. It relies on few crops as exports, and farming is often conducted in less technological ways or primitive ways. Previously referred to as a second world country or backwards nation can also be something that in the past it was called. And I would say probably a country that's kind of in the middle like that, just off the top of my head. Possibly Cuba, because they have some technological advancements and some exports and that sort of thing. Xenophobia. The intense dislike or fear of people from other countries or other religions or someone who's different than you. Fear or hatred for strangers or foreigners or aliens. And the thing to remember about xenophobia is it's something that grows. Unless you get to know someone who's different from you and you realize how similar you are and you focus on the similarities, you can really get stuck on the how you're dissimilar. Okay, plebeian. Often it is shortened to plebe. Maybe you've heard that before. I'm sure you have. Also called a plebe, pronounced with a long E. It comes from the ancient Roman term for commoner, referring to the lowest class in the hierarchy of power in ancient Rome. Voice. Okay, voice. It means something different when we're talking about it in historical context. The ability to be heard, the freedom to express your attitudes and opinions without them being silenced or punished, to have a say, vote, influence, input, role, or representation in a matter. And you'll see so many examples in history of women when they had no voice. In fact, when you got married in the early America, actually everything you owned as a wife became the property of your husband, and it was not differentiated. You were kind of swallowed up by his entire presence and who he was. Slaves definitely had no voice. They were not heard. They couldn't vote. Women couldn't vote. The Hispanic population also could not vote at all. Indians, so a lot of people were left voiceless. Democratize. Democratize, this is a great word. It's actually kind of the opposite of hierarchy. Democratize, whereas hierarchy, I showed you the picture, and I made you a picture of what hierarchy looked like. Let's see if I can find it. Of course not. Hierarchy was where you might have a king at the top, and he has all the power up at the top, and then several, it's distributed to the knights maybe in the Middle Ages, and they have less power, and then you have the peasants at the bottom, and they have no power. They are ruled over. Well, democratization is actually to make something equal for all people. So it's a leveling playing field. It's leveling, giving rights and equality to all people. To make something available for all people, to make it possible for all people to understand, an equaling process, removing hierarchy from equal rights. Hierarchy away from the equal rights. I just wanted to take one moment to talk about some of your majors and using these. So let's say that you are a criminal justice major. If you're depending where you're working, you may be the person who stands in when there's oppression or abuse, and you're giving a voice to someone who normally would not have a voice. All right. Xenophobia. I think we can all encounter that. There's a lot of people who, especially in the politics right now, there are feelings of immigration and for and against immigration and that sort of thing. Also, nativism is also another form of xenophobia. So that's actually something current day. We talked about the different developing nations. Okay. Obviously, if you are in the paralegal major, you deal with those people who are elite in being represented, and those people who are common, and those who have are given representation by the government, and those that hire their own and maybe pay a lot for it. Patriarchy we will talk a lot about. Matriarchy. Proletariat, the working class. Feminism, just wanting equal pay for each gender is something that's actually in politics right now. Misogyny, there are people we come across that really believe that women are not capable of the same things, that being able to do the same thing that men do. And what's really interesting is I have a 9-year-old, and he asked me last year when I was studying, he said, "Mommy, can men be feminist?" And I said, yes, honey, a man can be feminist, because a man can actually, if you have a daughter, your wife, your sister, your mom, you can just stand up for them for equality. So you absolutely can be a feminist if you just believe that they should be paid the same, treated the same, looked at as though that they are as capable mentally to achieve. All right. I was trying to find maybe one more. Thinking right now in America, who's in the core and the peripheries. The core would be like the mainstream society, and the periphery is going to be the people who are on the outskirts, which, very well may be, transgender individuals, or maybe people from that are immigrants from other countries. And you can still set it up in the core and peripheries, people who are often, treated differently because of their race or their religion. So definitely that core and periphery still exists today. Okay, I think I'm going to stop right there because I don't want to make the video too long, since you have 2 parts to watch anyway. And now you're going to take your pre-test again, and you hopefully will do much better on it and learn from it, and you're able to get 100%. So thanks very much. Have a good day.